Hi, everyone, and welcome back. Today, we're going to talk about Season 1, Episode 12 of Psych. If you're enjoying the show, please remember to like, subscribe, and share it with your friends. Today, I am actually joined by someone different. Matthew has to be out for a little bit due to some family issues, but we have my sister, Wendy, who is Matthew's mom, and she's going to be filling in for him for maybe a couple of episodes. So she'll give us some new perspective on some things, and hopefully you guys will enjoy the show with her as well. So just remember to, like I said, like, subscribe, and share it with your friends if you're enjoying things. Wendy, you want to say hi?
Hi, Psychos. It's so great to be here and get to be a part of this awesome podcast. And we're excited to share this episode with you.
Yay. All right. So let's talk about some news first, Wendy. First, we always want to give a shout out to the official Psych Fanatics of Facebook group. We're all part of that group. Me, Matthew, Wendy, all of us. So we're excited about that. We love that group and always want to show some appreciation for them. We also record a little bit ahead. So Wendy, why don't you tell us about what we kept seeing this week?
We saw a lot of posts about the 15-year anniversary of Psych and the first time Gus and Sean solved a case. And it's so excited that 15 years later, all the fans are still loving and supporting this show. It's great to see that.
It is. It's cool to be a part of it. It's really cool to be a part of it.
Especially since I remember watching the first episode myself when it came out with my son. So it's awesome memories every time I see it.
Yeah, it's a great show. I mean, I do think back now, and some of the episodes I don't remember quite as well, even though I've watched them a bunch of times. I purposely am not watching a lot of them while we do this show so that I will have some kind of new responses to things. But overall, these episodes are just still awesome. All right, guys. So this episode is titled Cloudy with a Chance of Murder. It originally aired on February 9th of 2007. It was written by Steve Franks, Andy Berman, Anupam Nigam, and staff writer Tammy Sager. And it was directed by Lev Spiro. So Andy Berman, we talked a little bit about him last week as well. He co-wrote and starred in episode 11, so that was last week. And he has co-written 25 episodes of Psych. He also worked on Rosewood, Carter, and produced and starred in many shows. A really talented guy, actually. A lot of different hats he can wear. The director of this episode, Lev Spiro, has an extensive biography dating back to 1994. He has directed so many other TV shows like The Journey of Alex Strange, Popular, a favorite of mine, Gilmore Girls, Dawson's Creek, Everwood, The OC, One Tree Hill, Arrested Development, Ugly Betty, which was another favorite of mine, Weeds, Everybody Hates Chris, even ventured into some Disney Channel stuff like Jonas and Modern Family. And The Tick are probably the most two recent things. But this was the only episode of Psych he ever directed. So I thought that was interesting. He never came back to do any more episodes. But Wendy, why don't you tell us what this episode was about? Give us a synopsis here.
In this episode, Sean and Gus go to the courthouse to pay Sean's tickets, and the guys come in contact with a suspect that is on trial. They see the news about the trial and decide to get involved and help the attorney defend her. While solving the case, Sean and Gus use Sean's hyper-observation skills, Gus's knowledge of all things, and a series of shenanigans to prove her innocence and help the attorney gain confidence. As usual, Sean gets into a kerfuffle with his dad during the case.
All right. Very good. General thoughts about this episode. I have to I do judge like maybe a little bit harshly. I don't know. Matthew usually doesn't think that I do, but I give this episode only 2 pineapples. I liked the Sean Henry interaction, but there wasn't really enough interaction with Jules and Lassie, or like the chief wasn't even in this episode. I also found that I didn't have any uncontrollable laughter in this episode. There was like no part of it where I had to pause just because I was laughing. There were definitely some great Gus moments. He was clearly living out a dream in this episode, but there was just nothing over the top for me. It was just okay. It was just okay. What about you?
I agreed with you on the rating. I gave this a I rated this a 2 pineapple episode. I felt it had some pretty funny moments between Sean and Gus, and with Hornstock, the attorney, in the courtroom. And it kind of reminded me of the 80s movie From the Hip, starring Judd Nelson. It also had some character building moments, I think, between Lassie and Sean, and Jules and Lassie, that were notable to me. And I think more of Sean and Henry's relationship are revealed in this episode, and Gus also gets the limelight in several scenes. However, it does lack the blueberry, food references, and Gus's nicknames. You didn't see all the characters, so it was really only okay for me. I wouldn't skip it, but it's not my favorite. I did find an interesting fact that on the website Vulture, there's an article ranking all of the Psych episodes from 1 to 122, and this episode actually falls into last place. And fun fact, it is the only show to remake an episode, and the writers remade this one again, with the remake falling in at number 70 on the ranking.
Oh, so maybe that's something to look forward to, that we get a better version of it later.
An episode in season 8.
Season 8, exactly. So, yeah, okay. That is interesting that you and I gave it the same rating.
I think so too.
It just wasn't nothing great about it. I always love these characters, always, but just nothing great about it.
I know. I really prefer the episodes where you see a lot of character building and their relationships and developing really who they are together as a group. And they were really divided in this episode. Yeah. And so it left you a little wanting more of the characters and that banter back and forth that you normally get.
I did like that Henry played a bigger role in this one. Like, I don't like when Henry's just absent. I like when he's present a lot, but I also want the other characters. Like, it's fun when they're all involved in it somehow. Like, in this episode, you didn't get a lot of like Sean and Lassie kind of nitpicking at each other. It just wasn't there. I don't know. It fell a little shy for me, but
I agree.
So let's go ahead and start breaking down this episode. We're going to go through and talk about each little bit here. We're going to start with, right off the bat, our flashback with young Sean and Henry. They're in a courtroom, and Henry is teaching Sean how to read the jury. So it's deductive reasoning in play here. And it, that starts off with Sean just wanting to know why the jurors are looking at everyone.
I also found it very funny that Sean wanted to know why they didn't have better seats in the courtroom, like they were watching a movie at the movie theater or something. Why do they have better seats than us, Dad?
The funny part about that is, from a kid's perspective, that is so true, right? Like, you don't understand it yet, and you don't know yet, and so immediately you're thinking, why is this not better?
I know, I want to be up front.
Exactly.
That's funny. So true.
Yeah, it's very true, actually. I think any kid would probably have felt that way. And knowing that that Henry was there for business to testify, I think it might have even been scary for a kid, like, especially when Henry got up to do what he was going to do and Sean's just there by himself. And if he doesn't understand the process, I don't know. I think it's good that Henry was trying to teach him, I guess. Teaching him, he never lets a moment go by that he's not trying to teach Sean how to deduct things. It feels, or deduce things. I don't know. What is the proper? Deduce. How to deduce things. I think it had to have been stressful for little Sean that he was always put in that position. I know we've talked about this a little bit before, about how he probably just felt like he never had a moment to just be a kid. But I don't know. All of it has certainly helped him.
I think it also would have been scary in cross-questioning of his dad. So, we don't see the whole perspective in the courtroom. We just see the beginning scene. But you're right. I think you don't know how apprehensive he would be later on during the whole process. But, everything's a learning moment for Henry. I kind of love that about him.
I love it and hate it. It's like it's a double-edged thing. Like, you can love it because you know that Sean is getting something out of it, but you also like go, man, give the kid a break. But he wouldn't be who he is if he didn't have that grown up.
This is true.
So now we jump to about a minute 14. Sean and Gus are walking up the courthouse steps talking about the Constitution. They're there because they're at the courthouse because Sean's bike has been impounded. And he thinks it's unconstitutional to take away a man's mode of transportation. So as they go in to pay the ticket, they start talking about the Constitution. And Sean's explanation of that is like, it says something, 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 don't mess with Texas, and all this. He clearly doesn't have a good understanding of what the Constitution says. However, he was trying. I mean, he was trying.
I felt that was one of the funnier moments in this episode, that little banter at the beginning. I mean, he was throwing in parts of the 10 Commandments and just everything into his reasoning. It was hysterical.
Yeah, he tries. He really tries. That once they go into the courthouse, it shows them walking around the hall. Sean has now refused to wait in the line to pay his tickets. He says it's not Space Mountain, so it's not worth it.
And of course, as Gus comes back, that people just wait in line all the time, and he's like, not me, I don't.
He refused. He said, no, I'm not doing it. After that moment, Sean notices a girl in the courthouse in the hallway, and this girl stops to pick up a piece of trash from the floor and throw it away in the trash can. And he looks at her and smiles, and she smiles back at him. And so they had this little moment. And I think, Wendy, you noticed something about this moment.
Yes, I noticed that when he smiled at her and she smiled back at him, it sort of looked like, from the observer's point of view, that he was kind of checking her out up and down. But really, if he was using that moment to observe the whole situation, and us psychos who watch the show and we know his skills, from a new observer, they could have taken it as, oh, he's checking her out. But he was really kind of checking out the singing. It was an interesting moment there, if you kind of caught that quick in a few seconds.
Yeah, there was more to that than him just checking out a girl. That's not what it was about. After that scene, we are back at the psych office. Fun things always happen here. So Sean says that he should not have gotten tickets on his motorcycle because he was using his ambassador's plates, which was funny in and of itself. But then Gus starts to question that and says, how are you an ambassador, Sean? And he says... He says that he was the ambassador of Bahrain. And he got the title after overseeing all sandcastle construction of the South American Club Med. To which Gus responds, you never worked at Club Med, Sean. So we have to wonder where Sean comes up with this. Like, I do not know how he, so quickly off the cuff just comes up with stuff so great. So you have to attribute this to really great writing. You gotta love the writing here.
And how he is hysterical and it makes no sense at all. And he is so serious. I was really the ambassador of the construction of sandcastles. Don't mess this up for me.
He turned that into an official job in no time at all. And Gus immediately just is like, no, Sean, no. It's their dynamic there is so good. In this scene, we also see that they turn on the TV. It's Channel 8, and it's a news story about the girl Sean saw at the courthouse. Because at the time, like, we are not involved in a case yet. At the time that he saw her, he simply saw someone at the courthouse. He didn't realize who he was seeing. And Gus says, "Don't you watch the news?" And Sean says he can't watch Channel 8 anymore because Lloyd wears a toupee. And it's like every newscast starts with a lie. Which is awesome.
That was funny.
It was awesome. So Sean does not believe that the school marm murderer is guilty. That's what they've labeled this girl that Sean saw. And he immediately is like, "I saw her and I don't think she's guilty. I don't believe that somebody who would pick up trash off the floor would be a murderer." So this did cause me, as a little side note, to look up where, like, what is this school marm reference about. So I looked it up, and it is a school mistress typically used with reference to a woman regarded as prim, strict, and brisk in manner. So that's where the school marm thing comes in.
And he also recognizes that she was willing to look him in the eye, which someone who's trying to hide the fact that they've committed a murder would not be willing to do. They'd want to look around everyone, avoid the topic altogether. But she was just willing to stop in her walk, pick up a piece of trash, look him in the eye. Just a lot of mannerisms that he has been taught to look for that he doesn't display. Or that she wouldn't display.
Okay, also on this news broadcast, Sean sees the defense attorney talking on the news. And he immediately puts together that this guy is just broken. He doesn't display confidence in any way. And, you know, like his scarf in his suit pocket is all stained, and he doesn't have on a nice tie, and his hair is all combed down in his face. And this guy does not come off as looking like a confident attorney or one capable of defending a murder suspect. So this makes Sean just stand up and essentially declare that guy needs them and that they are now going to be legal consultants for the case. He's pretty much sort of invited himself into this case.
Which is hysterical. And Gus just looks at him. He's got a new set of services for the psych office.
You can tell in Gus's mind, he's like, something else? We're going to do something else now too? Like, it's not enough that I'm a pharmaceutical sales rep and I am also helping run this fake psychic detective agency. And like, what else do you need me to do now, you know?
And it doesn't help that Gus doesn't even think the girl is innocent. He has like been watching this case and he's seen all this evidence piled up against her. And he is like, "You're out of your mind, Sean."
Yeah. Yeah, always. He always thinks that. But then, as we know, there's always something. There's always something that brings Gus in, that just reels him in, that is like too good for him not to be a part of. And we're going to find out in a minute what that is. So after the news and all of that and the declaration that they're going to be part of it, we are back at the courthouse. And we are with the press. So I thought this was kind of a cool way for Sean. He's pretty fearless anyway, but I did think what he did here was cool, where he just sort of stepped in front of the press and started talking to them, saying that he was helping on the case. And he actually introduced Gus as Burton Guster.
An original.
I know. We never see that. He's always given him some kind of crazy name. But he introduced him as Burton Guster and started talking to the press like he just belonged there.
Yes, he did. Total confidence all the way. And he hadn't even talked to the attorney yet. It was hysterical.
Exactly.
But he exuded confidence and everyone there believed he was a part.
Mm-hmm. And then we're going to find out now why Gus gets involved in this case, because they're sitting in the courtroom and Gus says, "I was pre-law once." Well, pre-law. and we find out that it was in the 6th grade.
And it was an advanced class.
It was an accelerated program. No, it was an accelerated program. Oh, so good, Gus. This is what hooks him in. He had this one little interest in law way, way, way back in the 6th grade. And now he's going to get to like live this out a little bit. And he's pretty excited about that. So now he's hooked. He's hooked, which is what always happens with Gus. Always. So we are now at about 6 minutes, 45 seconds. And Gus tells Sean, no, back up. Also in this scene, in order to work his way into the case, Sean has to butter up the attorney for the defendant. And his name is Adam Hornstock. So
Adam Hornstock, that name makes you laugh already. But he just uses what his dad taught him a long time ago in that scene that opened up this episode. And he told him, you got to be careful. Juror number 4. Look at juror number 4. You got to convince her because she's not paying any attention to you.
She's off. She's like turned off. Like she keeps actually turning away physically when he's in front of her talking. She isn't paying him no mind at all. She doesn't like him.
And Sean just is like, she's a fashionista. There's something about you. You got to do this little 360 dance. Show me what you got going on here. Which eventually has Gus, it results in Gus giving his tie to this attorney to make him look more presentable and appealing to this female juror. And it actually gives him confidence.
Exactly.
As he gets up to speak. So it works out in the long run, but poor Gus just does not want to give up his tie.
No, but Adam totally takes the bait here. And after talking in front of the juror again, she responds completely different to him. And so because what Sean said to do worked really well, he now has a little more confidence and he is ready to like battle out the rest of this case. And they start talking about them being part of the case after court is dismissed for the day. They talk about it, and Sean and Gus tell this lawyer that they are going to take this case on pro bono. And they're going to do this for free. And the pro bono comment sparked something. What happened there, Wendy?
That was hysterical. Gus said that they will take that they could take the case pro bono like attorneys do. And Sean is like, what? What are you talking about? Don't respond like that. This is silly. Don't use silly words to
use silly words in the courtroom.
Yes, it was great.
So they've decided to be part of this, and they are leaving, and they run into our favorite detectives, Lassie and Jules, in the hallway of the court. And Sean, this is one of my favorite moments in the episode. Sean says hi to Jules, and she like smiled and looked down like she was flirting. It was so cute because you can just feel that there's like something there with them. And I love it when they have these moments. Even though they're not long moments in the show and they're not dragging anything out, it's these little tiny pieces that you get that make you like, come on, just the two of them need to be together. These are two characters that just really like each other. Can we just make this happen already? And I don't know.
I had the same feeling on that. You could tell that they connected at that moment, even if it was just for that quick second. But there was a definite connection there between the two of them.
Definitely. And it was just a sweet little moment.
Yes.
Just sweet. And I like how he addressed her and not Lassie first. Right. He just is like, he just wanted to say hi to her. And I don't know.
Her smile just cute. Gave away how she felt at that moment. It was a quick smile. She didn't want to give him too much of a acknowledgement, but you could see it made her heart flutter.
Exactly. She loves him. Anyway. Okay, I digress. All right. So he has said hi to Jules. Now they're finding out also, like Lassie and Jules are finding out that Sean and Gus are helping the defense team. and that Lassie is the one that arrested her, the defendant in the first place. He arrested her. And at that moment, I was really thinking, I don't know about you, but I was really thinking that Lassie was not happy to find out that Sean was doing that, but I also felt like he wasn't doing much to object to it.
Right. That was one of my moments that we'll talk about later, that I really felt like there was an acceptance there. Mm-hmm. Like, it's not my favorite thing that you are helping this person go against something I did, but it's all right. And his comment to "don't screw it up" was just so subtle. It was no digging in it, really. It was more like an encouragement almost that kind of left him hanging,
right,
with a question mark, like, what did he just say? Like,
he was almost like challenging him.
Yes.
And we do find out why later, but I feel like he's always irritated that Sean is part of cases.
Right.
So there's a little bit of irritation there, but it wasn't like, that's the feeling you get, is like, it wasn't as strong as usual.
Right.
If his confidence in his case and if all of that was like so strong, he would have objected more, I thought.
You know, I don't even know if it's about that. I just sort of felt like Lassie was coming to terms with the fact that Sean is around.
Okay.
And, you know, maybe it isn't what he always wants, but there's not really much he can do about it at this point, because somehow, some way, Sean and Gus work their way into everything they're doing.
Right.
Whether it is from an outside source or an inside source or just by chance, they are there, and he is not getting rid of them.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, that's a good way to think about it. I mean, I think you looked at it on a broad way, and I looked at it more like just this particular case. So I do agree with that. I think that's true. I mean, maybe he is just reaching a point of acceptance and like, I can't do anything to make this dude go away. So I just need to embrace that he's going to be around. So, yeah, interesting.
But even with a slight taunt, though, you know, it was slight.
Yeah.
It was there, but it wasn't like the normal dig or disgust that Lassie projects towards Sean and Gus. So.
Yeah. Okay, so we are at 12 minutes. We're at the law office where this defense attorney works, and we learn here that his name is on the front door many times, but it's never about him. It's never like it's his grandfather, his father, his brother, and his sister-in-law, or his sister rather. They all have their names on the front door of this law firm, and we learn that he was given the case by his brother because they didn't believe that they could win it. And so they were kind of sending him in just to take the hit, essentially. Like, we know you're going to lose this case, so you take it. This is not winnable. So they kind of pawned it off on him. And so this kind of fuels Sean a little bit. You know, Sean is like, he's always sort of been the underdog in things, and he wants to actually push, just like he helped Lassie in the past episode. He wants to help this guy get better and get his name on the door too.
Right.
So, yeah, so in that scene, you kind of see Sean really feeling for this guy and like going, no, this is not going to be how this goes down.
Yes.
So
I thought this scene was a bit interesting how it opened, because in the office, it opens up with Sean in the chair at the desk of whoever this attorney's office they're in.
Like the big chair.
He's in the big chair behind the big desk. And what is he holding? A figurine of a fish. It just reminded you of sitting in Chief Vic's chair in her office, picking up that glass fish that he always wants to steal from her.
Yes.
It just brought back a familiar moment. Like, I'm in a different, I'm legal consulting. I'm not psychic detectiving, but I'm doing the same thing, and I'm going to make this place my home too. It was just interesting to me.
I think it's funny how he always just wants to sit in the big chair. Like, it's like, it doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter to him whose office he's in. He is feeling important enough that he wants to sit in that chair.
And it's funny to me too, because Sean would never go fishing with Henry. You know, his dad, he built him a pole. He had the whole 9 yards. He would never go fishing with him.
You went deep there.
But guess what? Every time he goes in offices and he finds a fish, that's the first thing he picks up.
Maybe it's comforting. But wow, you went deep. That's funny. You like found deeper meaning to the fish at the desk. I don't know. Also in this episode, we see the case files. So the lawyer, Adam, gives them all the case files and says he believes that this girl is innocent. And he really would like to prove that. And so Sean looks at all these case files, and it's like two like big binders, like 4-inch binders filled with paper. And Sean refers to that reading material like reading the phone book, and essentially says to him, listen, I need to do what I do. I see people, I feel the people, and I smell the people. And the guy goes, smell the people? Which I thought was funny. That was a cute moment there, but...
And see, I think this is what makes Sean and Gus a great team, because when that attorney pulled out these case files, Gus was excited. I mean, he reached out for it and grabbed it. He was ready to start opening that and read. And Sean is just like, man, that's like reading the phone book. I'm not doing that. They just go together, you know?
That's what starts us off at the TV station. In his effort to see, feel, and smell the people, they have to go to the TV station and examine the scene of the crime. So there are some cool things here, you know, I mean, the news anchor desk and the green screens and all the equipment. And clearly this is like a playground for these two. And so immediately Sean is like, we're going to have to take a look at this, right? You know, they need someone to sit in the anchor chair. Gus acts like he's upset about it at first, but he very quickly gets comfortable there and starts doing like vocal exercises and reporting fake news stories about the pharmaceutical salesman who has helped solve a murder. It's just funny. He just was very comfortable there. Little Gus of all trades. That's what we need to call him. Gus of all trades.
Yeah, he gets to be the news anchor, the attorney. He's got a lot of hats he's wearing in this episode.
Yeah, and he's not upset about it. He's not mad at it at all. So next, they are still at the TV station. We're at about 14 minutes, 57 seconds here. And they meet Reuben Leonard, meteorologist. Now, Reuben worked very closely with our victim, Jackson Hale. And they're finding something out about Reuben.
They find out that he does not like him, and he's extremely jealous of him. So much, in fact, that instead of packing up his belongings for his family, as he was stating, he was actually destroying all of his trophies.
Yeah, there's a supportive coworker. Like, you gotta love that attitude. You're dead, and that wasn't good enough. Now I'm gonna destroy your trophies too. So yeah, so they find out. But even after finding that out, Sean's like, he doesn't think that he did it. He's like, you know, he didn't kill him. He just wanted to be him.
Yes.
You know? So they go back now. They've gotten a little information from the studio. They met the assistant of Jackson Hale's assistant as well at the studio. She showed them around. And so they've met a couple of people. They have seen the scene of the crime. They're kind of deducing things. I mean, they're going through the motions, seeing, feeling, and smelling. I can't get past that. That was too funny. So we are now at 16 minutes, 20 seconds, and I have in my notes, I don't know what you have, but I have that they, mainly Gus, are interviewing this defendant. Yes. They're in this like interview room with her, and I was cracking up because Gus is like holding the law book with all these notes in it, and he's got his suit on with the jacket buttoned. He's walking around the room questioning her. I thought that was funny.
Well, you know, he does jump right into talking.
He did.
And he's serious. He's like the attorney. He's got the stance. He's got the mode. He's got the voice. And he's got the legal jargon going on. And he is just ready to pounce.
Yeah.
And even to the point of not helping pouncing.
Right. Like he's just outright like scaring her.
Yes.
It's not like I want to be helpful here and really get to the bottom of this. He's all in like a few good men mode and like, I'm going to question this witness. She's not going to like it. It was pretty funny. He was very, very involved in that character.
And, Sean, the attorney, they're both believing, okay, this girl is innocent. She did not do this. We know for a fact she did not do it. We got to prove it. And Gus is in there making her feel like, okay, you are a criminal and I do not believe you.
I like Sean at this point goes, Gus, can I see you in the hallway so we can exchange words in a hushed tone? So he really wants to talk to him about what's going on. So they do go out in the hallway and Gus starts citing a case and telling Sean that they need to investigate for more evidence. So now he's switched from when they were in the psych office earlier and Sean thought that she was guilty. Now he's not sure. He's invested in finding the truth now.
Right.
So they also notice something else in the hallway because the judge is walking and he's kind of grabbing his back. And Sean's like, look, he's in pain. No wonder he's so grumpy. And Sean, or Gus rather, says, that's not his back. He's grabbing his kidneys. And Sean says, oh my gosh, he must have kidney stones. So here we are again with Gus's medical knowledge coming in handy and really helping in solve the case. You don't see why just yet, but we're going to in a few minutes. But it was good knowledge. Go Gus.
It was a Gus moment in this episode. What I called it a Gus moment for him.
Yeah, he has a few here where it's like he gets to shine a little bit.
Yes.
I like when Gus gets to shine. Gus is fun.
I know, because he always does usually play the second fiddle to Sean, and when he gets to be the person who acknowledges something and gets it right and he is helping them move forward in the case, sometimes it gets left behind, but we as the fans, we love it.
Yeah, and you know what I've noticed in doing this podcast and rewatching these with such detail, I have noticed that Gus plays a bigger role in solving these cases than you initially think. Like overall, you think, oh, this is all Sean's deductive reasoning and his observance and things like that. And yes, that does come into play, but sometimes he doesn't know what to do with what he's observed. Right. And Gus is always there with it.
Right, because this ends up being a very relevant piece of information that Sean didn't get. He saw the back pain, but he didn't know exactly what it was. And so it ends up being the path to the correct way.
Right. Well, and it's like the path of acceptance in the courtroom. So, I mean, it actually is a key piece of information. So we're glad that Gus sort of knew what to do there. Okay, they've got all this information now. They go back into the courtroom. And at 19 minutes, 18 seconds, we find out that Henry's in the courtroom observing everything. Do you have any notes about how that happened, Wendy?
Yes. The attorney, Hornstock, he was struggling with his notes and his questioning and getting it together and just kind of sat down giving up after a really brief questioning of one of the witnesses. And so Sean's like, you got to get on your game, man. And he's like, well, that's easy for you to say. You have all the support in the world. I've never had my dad show up at one of my cases, and you're here one day, and your dad's here. And Sean's like, he is? Yeah. I met him in the hallway. He's a great guy, kind of thing.
Yeah, Sean was really shocked, though. I mean, that was like surprising to him.
I mean, he turned around, looked at his dad. His dad nodded to him, and he's like, okay. And, I sort of feel like that can kind of play both ways. I think, like Barb said earlier, that Henry's always trying to teach a lesson, but could you give the kid a break kind of thing, where you have that back and forth play of, is this good or is it not? And I think Sean knows in his heart Henry loves him, but he's always butted heads with his dad. And it's almost to the point where like his dad sort of pushes him to a point of aggravation. And so what Hornstock looks at as this greatest supportive role in my family, someone's there to back me up, make me feel good. Sean kind of looks at it as, is my dad back there waiting for me to make a mistake?
Right. It's easy for everyone else to make that assumption like, oh, wow, he's so supportive. He's really involved with you. But Sean has dealt with him all of his life. And while I always think that Henry's intentions are good, sometimes it would have to be pretty stifling for Sean when he's like young, when he was younger anyway, to always have that critical sort of attitude coming at him. Like, if you don't get this perfect, or even if you do get it perfect, I'm going to call it adequate.
Yes.
Yeah,
you know, it's a feeling of never being able to meet up to his dad's expectations. And even now when he's doing something he loves that should, in essence, in his head, make his dad proud of him, his dad's always, I mean, even in this episode, you know, oh, maybe we're both psychic, you know, kind of.
Yeah, he's still critical of it. And he still doesn't acknowledge when it's good. So there are times when Sean has solved crazy cases, even in past episodes now, and he just still doesn't get that from Henry. Now, Henry may be thinking it inside, but he certainly doesn't share it with Sean.
Right.
So it becomes like this whole battle, like all the time with the two of them. And so, I mean, I find it interesting that even in that, like, even with how they are, Sean still always goes to him for help. It's an interesting dynamic for sure. All right, so now we are at about 20 minutes. We are still in the courtroom. And at this point, the prosecutor is not happy with the fact that Sean is there. They are trying to explain why Sean is there and why he has a purpose for being there. So they're telling the judge that there's a high-ranking detective in the audience there that will vouch for him. And he refers to Lassie in this scene as the wispy Irish fellow that looks like he has been sucking on Sour Patch Kids. Which, if you think about it, is really a great description of him. But not one you would have thought you would have heard.
Yes.
So he has this exchange with the judge that makes it very clear that he does not believe in the psychic mumbo jumbo. And that's when they use Gus's piece of information to ask the judge, like, you can see Sean in his dramatic way touches the judge's nameplate and immediately goes into having this vision that he's having kidney stones. And the judge is very taken aback and tells Sean that, how did you know? Like, I didn't tell that to anyone. And so Sean tells him that his aunt had an old method of gargling with mineral water and following it by eating greens.
And he would recommend asparagus so that when he goes to the bathroom, he knows it's working.
He says, that way, when you make water later,
you will know it's working.
It's too funny. Yeah, very funny. We're still at the courtroom now.
I do want to go back in there and say, when Lassie stands up to confirm that Sean is a psychic detective that is used as a consultant for the Santa Barbara Police Department, this is another one of those moments like in the hallway. Lassie had a tiny smirk on his face when he said, yes, he does. But he was not degrading or insulting or, you know, it's a stupid thing, but it's true. It sort of was like, again, that acceptance had come over him, and I'm just going to go with this.
Well, and didn't the judge say, like, has he helped solve murder investigations?
And Lassie said, yes, he has.
Yes. And I thought he asked him something else, too. Like, is he helpful? or something. And he says, yes, he is, or whatever. He acknowledges all of it and
Right.
doesn't fight it. And I mean, I wonder if because that, Lassie has this belief in justice and the court system and the whole thing, and so maybe because he was honoring where he was not giving Sean a hard time.
Right.
Or maybe he's just, like you said, accepted it.
Well, it was just sort of, you could see the tiny smirk on his face. It was almost like he just did not want to admit that Sean had helped the police solve all these cases.
Right. But he knows.
But he was going to tell the judge the truth. But he didn't do it in the insulting way Lassie normally talks to Sean. So it was another one of those moments for me that I thought was, I kind of like this in this episode. It sort of changes their relationship a tiny bit.
Yeah, I like that. I'm still in the courtroom, or well, not the courtroom, but the courthouse at 21 minutes, 36 seconds. Sean goes by Henry and rips the cell phone out of Henry's hand and finds out in this little exchange that they have that Henry regularly goes to the courthouse. He goes and sits in the courtrooms every Thursday. And Sean is clearly not liking that he's there. But Henry says, maybe we're both psychics. Ooh. Like he's joke. I don't know. Sean tells Henry he's retired too early. He can't let it go. I didn't know what to make of this exchange. Like, you could tell that Sean was very aggravated that he was there. Henry always wants some sort of presence in law enforcement somehow. It was kind of just an odd little exchange for me.
I don't know. I kind of felt like Sean sort of acted as if he were surprised and shocked that Henry would even regularly come into the courtroom and watch cases. And I don't know. I feel like Henry is one of those individuals who wants to keep on top of things. Yeah. And even though he's retired, to keep his game going too, mentally and all, it's almost like he just comes to check this out and see where things are going nowadays.
To challenge himself a little bit.
Yes, to challenge himself, keep himself knowledgeable about what's happening and how things are being done. And Sean is just like, really, Dad? It's
like he wants to keep reading people. Like he needs to do that to occupy his mind.
Yes.
Or to keep him, I don't know. You do get that feeling that he needs to challenge himself a little bit. Maybe Sean's right. Maybe he left too early. I don't know.
But I do think Henry sometimes misses his job. Because, really, even though he acts annoyed when Sean comes to him for help on a case, he really does like to insert his knowledge. Like, there's an inner satisfaction coming from, my son's asking me. I'm going to belligerently give him this information, but I'm going to help him anyway.
Mm-hmm. He always does. But he does get that little dig in at the end, and he's like, it took you long enough to figure out the kidney stone. So there's it's adequate. There's the Henry, it's adequate, Sean. You're doing an adequate job. It's never good job you figured that out. So,
right. But in that case, though, in defense for Gus was the information
was the one that
giver.
Figured it out. Yeah, it's true. It's true. But Henry didn't really know that.
That's true.
Yeah. So
point.
Now we're back in the case. They're going over testimony and stuff in the courtroom. Sean wants Hornstock to question Reuben. And because Reuben's on the witness stand. And he wants to know what Reuben's feelings about the victim are. And Hornstock doesn't quite get it at first, what he wants to do. And then he finally says, oh, you want to plant a seed of doubt with the jury. He gets that. And Sean goes, yeah, Applestock. Like, instead of Appleseed, it's Applestock. And I thought that was cute. That was, fun joke. And it worked. Sean handed him the fake weatherman names that he thought would be interesting, because Reuben's clearly upset that he is not the on-air weatherman. And he's like an actual meteorologist. He has a degree. We find out that the victim didn't even have a degree in meteorology. He was a physical education teacher. And because he was a good-looking guy, he got to be the on-air meteorologist. And so this upset this Reuben. And they start bringing up that he didn't have a weatherman name. And the more nicknames that they kept going over, the more upset Reuben got. And he finally admitted that, yes, he wanted him dead.
And so that let the jury know more than just the defendant was after this guy.
Exactly. That it didn't, because that's what you want to do, is plan one of those without a doubt kind of situations, particularly in a murder case. And I will say, I personally have served on a jury before for a murder case. And there was a lot that would not have happened that you're seeing on this episode. There's a lot in every TV courtroom drama that you see that doesn't really happen in a courtroom. I was in that jury for a month long, and a lot of what happens here you don't see. It's not real accurate, but for the purpose of an hour-long drama or comedy, you got to just go with it. So they did what they had to do there. And we find out that, he had a stake in this too. He didn't want that guy around. So next up, Wendy, what happens next?
At 26:50, Sean and Gus are out at the out on the courthouse steps, and Lassie and Jules walk up. And this was a moment that I thought was important. Jules tells them that they don't really understand Lassie. Mm-hmm. You guys, it's right in front of your face. You're really missing this with Lassie. You really need to think about what you're doing, And she drops some papers on the ground. And of course, Sean and his hyper observation skills, he kind of sees what's on it through the back of the paper. And when they get back to his office at the psych office, he's writing it down on a piece of paper, and they realize, hey, Lassie has sent a memo to the prosecutor, and it's not admitted into evidence. So they cannot find it. They've looked, Gus has looked through this entire file multiple times, and that paper is not there. So now they know, okay, we're missing something. We got to find out what this is.
Yeah, and they're trying to hide it. Like the prosecutor's trying to hide whatever that was. So that lets them know they need to look a little deeper as well. I loved 27 minutes, 5 seconds where they're back in the courtroom and the judge has a bottle of mineral water and a glass with asparagus stems in it because he has listened to Sean and he's totally going to try this method to get rid of his kidney stones. And the truth of the matter is, Sean could have made that up out of thin air. And this guy could be eating asparagus and drinking mineral water for no reason. But I love that he's bought into it.
But it's funny because you can tell really he's bought into it, not only by the evidence of these items on the stand up there, but it's because he is giving Sean and Hornstock leeway.
Oh, yeah.
Every time there's an objection, we'll take it anyway.
Absolutely.
He's sort of like, okay, we're going to see what these guys are going to do.
Yeah.
And it sort of made him knowing that he had a kidney stone when he had not told anyone has sort of opened this guy's eyes to say, maybe there's something here.
Right. Like if this guy, this psychic is working on this case, maybe he sees something. I thought that was cute. We go to the judge's chambers next because we have now learned that there's a videotape that the prosecution wants to admit into evidence. And Sean, they're trying to make their case, and Sean says that should not be admissible due to unfair surprisery.
I love how he comes up with these things.
I know, clearly not a legal term, but unfair surprisery. And of course, Gus is ready again to cite things. He's already given in the courtroom, he's already cited why Sean should be able to speak in the courtroom or question a witness or anything. So Gus is just in. He is in it. He has really, really taken this seriously.
And when they were in the judge's chambers, they got there because the other attorneys had not admitted the letter from Lassiter.
Right.
And they're like, you have to put this into evidence. You have to. You can't do that. And so it was really funny how all of this played out. But she's right. Gus is just taking the lead on this. And it is so funny to just see the next part of this episode.
Absolutely. So they have reviewed the tape. And it makes her look very guilty. Like, it clearly shows that they were the two people there, and there are sounds involved and everything. I mean, like, it's the whole thing filmed this guy dying, but they were below where the camera was hitting when it happened. So you couldn't see everything, but there was nothing to suggest to, any normal person that it wasn't her that did it. So anyway, they've reviewed it. The prosecutor says, you know what? I'm going to offer you a deal. It's going to be on the table till the morning. And everyone is saying, you know what? She needs to take this deal. And Gus, they're talking to her about this. And he's seemingly taken on the lead attorney role. And I mean, in his mind, he is in that interview room just like taking control, telling her that she should take the deal. And, this is evidence is really damning. It's not good for her.
If the jury sees it, they're going to just, prosecute her immediately, find her guilty. She really has to think about this.
Right. Well, Sean says, no, don't take the deal. He takes the videotape. He says, no, don't do it. I know there's something in here. I know it.
Well, he still believes she's innocent. Hornstock believes she's innocent. Even Lassie's note, stated that he didn't even feel the lady had a motive. So he is like, don't take the deal. Don't. And Gus is just like, what?
Yeah, he has thrown everybody off. But see, this is when Sean sort of like, says uncle. And he's like, I gotta go talk to my dad. So he goes to Henry's house. We're at about 32 minutes now. Sean is pacing in back of Henry, saying he can't afford to have a guilty verdict on his record. And Henry quickly reminds him that he is not an attorney, but Sean knows something on the tape is not right.
And so in their interactions around 33 minutes and 26 seconds, Sean is, talking to his dad about, all this started because I had my motorcycle impounded because, I parked near a fire hydrant at his apartment, and his dad starts talking to him and says, yeah, well, you shouldn't park.
First he says, what kind of person has someone's motorcycle impounded? Like, he's like, what kind of person does this?
Right. And then Henry is like, well, maybe people shouldn't park 14 feet from the fire hydrant or something like that. Like, he has an exact amount, and Sean realized that his dad is the person who reported him and got his bike impounded in the first place. And so, of course, Sean is not happy.
No, but okay. So here we get into some interaction where you see this about Henry, that the reason he did that is because he didn't like getting a call about Sean in a motorcycle accident. And so this is like where he loves his son. He doesn't want to get that. No parent wants to get a call like that. But here's where what we couldn't figure out is about whether they were referring to the accident that he got in the spelling bee episode, because he didn't even call his dad about that. So we don't know if this was kind of a blunder on their part where it was like an inconsistency, or if Sean had been in a different wreck at some other point that we don't know about.
Because I realized, I watched that episode several times, recently, and Gus called his dad and made a big issue of the fact, why didn't you call your dad?
Exactly.
Don't you think your dad's worried about you?
Yeah.
Well, why'd you call him? Because he's worried about you. Like, you should have called him, kind of thing. And so when he said that, I understand, I want my son in a safer mode of transportation. I want him to, be safe. But I don't want to be the person on the hospital record that gets called if you're going to be silly,
Exactly.
And it's like, but he never called you.
Well, but I mean, and you could see in this scene, like, especially after Henry walks out of the room, Sean is kind of baffled that his dad sort of cares that much about this.
Yes.
And so it's so funny, again, how everybody around him sort of sees him supporting and loving Sean.
Right.
But Sean doesn't feel that.
No,
and
he felt
he's baffled.
He felt his dad was out to get him.
Yeah,
and critical. You're doing it again.
So critical.
You're making a point to get my motorcycle impounded instead of helping me. You're trying to make my life difficult.
You do want to say to Sean, though, sometimes, like, at what point are you going to stop taking this as him being critical and start making it that he's really trying to make you better? I don't know. I guess the two go hand in hand very often with a lot of parents, but it's a fine line to walk for sure. And I think, honestly, Henry's just doing the best he can.
Right. And I think it's hard, too, as a kid, having a critical parent and constantly feeling as if you cannot meet their expectations, that you have an instant defense mode that you go into.
Yeah.
And that leads to rebellion. And Sean has clearly not gotten out of that, no matter how old he is reached at this age. You know, he has not left that kid mode where he's like, I'm going to show you.
Yeah. Absolutely. Okay, so we are at 35 minutes, 9 seconds at the psych office. Sean has slept there. He's left his dad's place. He has gone there. He has put that evidence tape on replay and just watched it on a loop and fallen asleep like that with chopsticks in his mouth like a walrus, I might add. Gus comes in, wakes him up. He's like, Sean, what are you doing? We got to be at court. The videotape starts playing again, and he sees something on it. And this is the moment that breaks the case for him. So they go back to the courtroom.
And Sean wants to address the witness. And the prosecution, of course, objects again. He's not an attorney. He can't get up here. He can't talk. And then Gus gets another Gus moment. He steps right back into lawyer mode and tells the courtroom with references to a case file and everything why Sean is able to get up and question that juror.
Exactly.
And it was hysterical, you know, and when the judge asked him, you know, like, and how do you know this? What law school did you go to? I took a pre-law class in 6th grade.
But it was an accelerated program.
Right, man.
He had to throw in, it was an accelerated program. You got to love that with Gus. Go ahead.
I was going to say, and Sean just takes over. As soon as he gets permission to go, he is like up there in front of that girl questioning her. The receptionist for Mr. Jackson Hale. And he had figured out that she was the person to kill him because she was jealous that he never wanted to be with her. He's this Jackson Hale guy is a player. She's got to juggle all his phone calls from all the women he has, been with. But never once did he even recognize her.
She was invisible to him. And I thought that was a cool correlation, how she said she felt invisible to him, because on the videotape, what Sean saw was her shadow. And he saw the rim of her glasses, but because it was like a green screen thing, she did not show up on the tape. All he saw was the shadow. And so nobody else had noticed it, but he, of course, did with his observation.
And then once you saw it, you could see clearly her glasses outlined through there, but you wouldn't have noticed it until it was right at the right spot in the tape. And it was very quick, Yep.
And right there on the stand, she admitted that she was in love with him and he never noticed her and that she killed him. And so that was perfect. Sean once again has solved the case. And yay for, Sean and Gus. We are now at 41 minutes, wrapping up the episode. We're at the station, and Sean is back there with Gus to get his motorcycle back. There's going to be an auction, and they are there to bid on it. He's going to get it back. Well, Henry shows up to help too, and Andy Hornstock shows up there too. They all want to help Sean get his bike back, which I thought was really kind of cool. But what tops all of it is that Buzz brings the bike out and says it was handled internally and that they don't even have to bid on it. And next we're like, who did that? And out walks Lassie.
And that was my aha moment.
Yes, we'll get to that. It was such a great moment. I love when you get to see vulnerability and sweetness in Lassie. He is usually such a I don't know, like a roughly edged character that is like just in your face. This is how it is by the letter of the law, da 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 da, you know, and when he shows that side, like when he was drinking in the one episode and you know told Sean that he just like amazed him or whatever, you astounded him. Like when you see those moments with him, I love that part of Lassie.
Because it's rare.
Yeah.
You know, it's not an everyday occurrence. You don't see it in every episode. You don't even see it in every few episodes. And so when you get that moment, it is one you cherish, sort of, because you really see that he cares.
I guess we wouldn't appreciate it as much if he was like that all the time.
That's true.
And there are benefits to the other side of him too. But like in these cases, I personally just really enjoy I just enjoy that. But it was a great ending to the episode, and Sean was a little bit flabbergasted by it. And, you know, Hornstock said he made partner in the firm and wants to use Sean and Gus again. And so it was like a nice little neat bow that they wrapped up the end of this episode in. So I did like that. So, all right, Wendy, it is time for our notable points. Yay. So, first thing, I actually didn't have one in this episode, but you had an yeah moment. What was your yeah moment?
In this episode, I just felt that Lassie had seemed to warm up to the idea of Sean and Gus, and ending the show with him getting his bike out before anyone else could, just sort of, it was a moment that was exciting to have in this episode, and it was unexpected.
Okay.
You know, you did see him soften a little bit in his remarks earlier, but I would have never, ever guessed that Lassie would have been the person to get his bike out of the impound.
Yeah, and you could tell too, well, this is like part of the episode where Lassie didn't feel confident in his arrest. And I don't think he wanted to outright admit that he didn't feel confident in it. But he was going to show it in other ways. And that's what Jules was talking about on the courtroom steps when they said, you're missing something. You're not seeing everything about Lassie here.
Right.
And so this was a case where he wasn't confident in it. So I'm glad he sort of did something to offset that a bit. Okay, come on, son moment. Mine wasn't necessarily a moment. It was just that they were sort of working on opposite sides. I don't like the episodes as much where the four of them aren't sort of working together. I prefer that. So that was kind of like, come on, son, don't put them against each other for me. What was yours?
I thought that even though it was a Henry behavior, I didn't really care for it when he revealed that he had a part in getting Sean's bike impounded. I know he loves to teach Sean lessons, and even getting his bike impounded for Henry in his brain was a good thing. It was the right thing to do for his reasons. Well, because he didn't want him
to drive it anymore. Yeah.
For his reasons. However, I don't think that Sean should have known that. You know, it should have been left. You don't think that
he should have told him. Okay.
Right. It should have just been left that his bike was impounded.
Yeah.
Because he already has sort of that hit and miss relationship with his dad sometime. And it just sort of was another thing.
Well, okay, but the end let you know that Henry felt bad about that because he went there to help him get it back. But still, it was like, yeah, it would have been better maybe if he had not revealed that. But revealing that told us something about Henry.
Yes.
So I think they kind of, I don't know. I'm kind of on the fence there. But I get why you would have picked that. I get it. Wait for it moment. For me, this was at 35 minutes and 9 seconds when Sean sees the evidence on the tape. This is when he had been looking at it all night and finally he saw it. Because, like, for me, a lot of times the wait for it moments are whatever breaks the case. Right. So unless there's a really great moment within the some of the characters. But for me, this is the wait for it moment. Like, all right, we're going to find out exactly what he saw. And this is kind of exciting. I usually get excited to find out what he finds.
Oh, that was a good one. I didn't really have one.
Okay. All right, Henry's lessons. What do you got?
We were kind of the same, just learning how to read people. And I put how to park correctly, too, because he sort of made a point about that several
Right.
times in
Right.
the episode. But it was funny because, it's the do it right or don't do it at all
I
thing.
gotcha.
But, yeah.
We did have an appearance of a crazy Henry shirt this episode in the courtroom. The shirt that he was wearing, it was like a crazy greenish yellowy print, and so like a Hawaiian print. I love that these are making an appearance in each episode now. We're finally getting to the point. It makes me happy episodes that we get Henry in because he's one of my favorite characters.
Yeah.
I usually would like a little more of Buzz's character too. We didn't get a lot of that this time, but I really love Henry's character a lot. And I like when he's a bigger part of them. I think he adds a lot of dry comic relief.
Yeah.
I enjoy him. But anyway, so the shirts starting to make an appearance are like an indicator of that. And I love that. 80s guest stars. The one really dominant one here was the man who played the judge. His name is Donnelly Rhodes, and he has 163 acting credits that date back to 1956.
Wow.
I remember seeing him in 80s shows. He was on Golden Girls. He's done The Facts of Life, It's a Living, Soap, Magnum PI, Taxi, and so many more. He is a great character actor and has been in a lot of things. Did you?
I did not have anything for 80s actors. I did mention again for the 80s references. I couldn't find any correlation anywhere in my research that this had anything to do with the movie From the Hip, but I do know that The Breakfast Club and the characters from that movie are some of their favorites. And Judd Nelson starred in From the Hip, and it just, if you've ever seen that movie, some of his tactics were kind of like what they were doing in the courtroom, and it just related that to me
Just
to
gave
that
you that feeling.
1987 movie. So it just kind of gave me that feel.
Yeah. We did not see the blueberry at all in this episode, which hurt me a little bit, but it is what it is. I didn't see any good changes in this episode. Did you find any?
I just put that I felt it was awesome that Jules pointed out something good about Lassie's motives. It's starting to show how their characters are meshing and they're really becoming true partners. And that
That's a good observation.
She's seeing more of how Lassie really interacts, and she's going with that, and it just, I don't know, I felt that it made them appear closer, that they were getting closer. Because in the beginning, he was kind of not taking her suggestions or anything very well and kind of blowing off what she thought. And now it's sort of like they're more working as a team.
Yeah, I get that. That's a good observation. Very good observation. We only had one young Sean and Gus scene in this episode, and actually it was only Sean this time, and it was that opening scene with Henry. The Where's the Pineapple moment. Wendy, do you want to do this moment?
Sure. It was found at 2:38. Sean was eating pineapple out of a dish in the psych office. It was pretty easy to spot this time, though.
Yes, they did not make us work for this one, which
That's
was
right.
kind of nice because there have been past episodes where I have literally rewatched the whole episode looking at all background the whole time, trying to find it.
Yes.
So they did not make us work for this one, which was kind of nice. Okay. So for you, how did this episode hold up over time?
Well, I feel like it was okay. It was most of the stuff was able to hold up. I do know that, the VCR tapes and the VCR player and the videotapes, that's not what we do anymore. And a lot of stuff in the TV station would now be digital versus maybe some of the cameras and stuff that they use and the technology they were using and the flip phone. I felt overall it could hold up over time, because some people still do have VCRs and they can relate to what that is.
I agree. I mean, I just recently watched my wedding video on a VCR tape. So, I mean, now this is where Matthew would call me old and, which he frequently does, but that's okay. That's okay. I can take it. I just will say that for me, those were the same things that I thought wouldn't hold up, would be the VCR tape as evidence and Henry's flip phone. Overall, I thought the theme of it holds up, the plot of it holds up. There weren't a lot of things, and having said that, this again is not one of my favorite episodes. So this is not one I'm going to go back and just like rewatch all the time if just because I love it. But I don't think it's because it doesn't hold up. I just think that for me, just not a favorite episode.
Yeah, I agree.
So the only food mention we have here, they didn't even talk about it. It was just Sean eating the pineapple, which is odd too, because usually they're eating something in every episode, but interesting. So
he did have Chinese food, in the empty container,
yes,
but it wasn't mentioned. It was just visually there.
All right. So Wendy, your first episode.
It was exciting. Yay.
It's fun. I mean, we're definitely psychos. We love this show. So we're going to wrap this episode up, though. Now we want to thank you guys so much for listening. On our next episode, we will be discussing season 1, episode 13. And that one is titled Game, Set, Murder. And I'm not sure. I think Wendy's probably going to be doing that episode with me again. And just so that you guys know, Matthew's fine. Everything's good. He just had some things he's got to take care of. But we are going to come back and do the next episode together again with me and Wendy, and that should air again next week. In the meantime, please check us out on our Facebook group. We know you know ... a podcast about psych.
And on Instagram, the Psych Podcast, or at Gmail, the Psych Podcast @gmail.com. Please send any comments, suggestions, questions, anything about the podcast, and we'll be happy to get you an answer.
We definitely will get the best answer we can for you and would love the interaction. I am again going to say thank you guys so much for listening, and I hope you have an awesome week.